Imagine the last time you solved a truly complex problem.
Oh, like debugging a really stubborn piece of code.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe, I don't know, balancing a difficult budget or mapping out a big life plan.
Right.
In that moment of really intense focus, you probably felt like this floating genderless brain, just a pure machine crunching numbers, completely detached from the physical world.
Like you just pure logic.
Yes, exactly. We have this really deep-seated cultural habit of treating human consciousness like it's like a piece of neutral software. And it just happens to be downloaded into the messy physical hardware of our bodies.
And the hardware is flawed, right?
Right. The hardware gets sick, it ages, it has a gender, it has a shape, but we assume the software, the mind, just have pure unadulterated logic.
Well, that assumption is exactly what we are dismantling today.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It really is. The text we're unpacking for this deep dive is, it's a densely philosophical, highly radical excerpt. It's titled, Both the Body is Female and the Mind is Female.
It's quite a title.
And the author just takes a sledgehammer to that entire software-hardware illusion. Our mission today is to impartially map out the mechanics of this argument because, well, the text makes this uncompromising assertion right out of the gate.
And that assertion is?
Quote, the mind is female. The body is female. Both are female.
Okay, wow. And just to be clear for you listening, the goal here isn't to declare this as the absolute biological truth, right? Or like to take a side in some cultural debate.
No, not at all.
We're doing a deep dive into a profound philosophical thought experiment. We're going to look at the world through the lens of this specific argument for a little while.
Right, because if you accept the author's premise, I mean, it completely rewrites the rules of how we understand intelligence.
It really does. So to get there, we need to start where the text starts, which is identifying what the author calls a massive historical error in human thought.
Yes, the big mistake.
Right. It seems like society drew this hard line in the sand centuries ago, like shoving all the messy physical traits into the female box and leaving the intellect completely untouched.
Untouched is actually the perfect word for it. The text explicitly calls out this long habit of thought.
A habit of thought.
Exactly. Historically, philosophy and society strictly associated the feminine with the physical realm. The specific language the author uses is striking. She says the feminine was relegated to sensation, curve, capacity, the interior life of flesh.
So very physical, defined by boundaries in biology.
Right. But the other side of that line, the realm of reason, intellect, pure thought, that was left deliberately unmarked.
Unmarked, meaning like default.
Yeah, the universal default.
Because when something is unmarked in society, it gets to pretend it has no specific identity at all, right? It just gets to be objective truth.
It's the standard.
Yeah, society treated thought as if it were completely genderless, as if it had no physical anchor whatsoever.
And the author argues, we've been pretending the mind exists prior to the body, that it, like, floats in some imagined exemption from physical reality and then simply descends into the physical form to take up residence.
To just live there.
Right. It's the idea that a mind is just a mind, and it happens to live inside a female body, like a driver stepping into a car.
Okay, but wait, hold on. If the mind isn't this neutral thing descending into the body from some philosophical cloud, where does the author claim reason actually comes from?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because from a purely biological or even cognitive science perspective, that's a tough pill to swallow. If the mind doesn't descend into the body, how did the text explain the origin of thought itself?
So the text asserts that reason is born, it is held, and it is moved through a body that was already something before it ever thought a single thought.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the mind arises from within. It is entirely constituted by the body. And because the body in this context is female, the mind that arises from it is intrinsically tied to that reality.
It's not just a tenant in the building.
Exactly. It doesn't just live in a female house. It is made of female materials.
Made of female materials. That completely upends how we think about the act of thinking itself. Because now we can't just call cognition a neutral process, right?
It can't. Not under this framework.
If the mind is made of female materials, the actual, like, mechanical process of thinking cannot be separated from the physical form.
And the author terms this the architecture of cognition.
The architecture of cognition. I like that.
The assertion is that this architecture itself is female. It's not just some universal cognitive process conveniently located inside female tissue.
Right.
The mechanism of processing information carries the undeniable signature of the physical vessel it moves through.
So let's translate some of the heavier academic language the text uses here because it's actually incredibly descriptive once you break it
Oh,
down.
absolutely.
The author describes cognition as the phenomenology of attention, of noticing, of return.
It's so poetic.
It really is. But let's ground that phenomenology of attention. That isn't just staring at a math problem, right? It's the physical sensation of focusing.
The actual feeling of your brain working.
Yes. It's the way your brain physically circles an idea, steps away from it, and returns to it before the concept finally clicks.
Breaking down thought, not as a static object, but as a dynamic, physical action is crucial to this argument. Think of it like a river flowing through a canyon.
Okay, I love this analogy. Let's dig into that.
So if the river is the thought process and the canyon is the physical body, you might be tempted to say, well, the water is just neutral.
Right, it's just water. It's just H2O, regardless
Yeah.
of where it flows. It's unmarked.
Exactly. But the water is actively shaping the rock, and the rock is entirely directing the flow of the water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the water picks up minerals from that specific stone. It changes color, it changes speed and turbulence based on the unique curves and depths of the canyon.
So they are totally inseparable.
Completely. You cannot separate the flow of that specific river from the landscape it's moving through. The text argues that thought carries the physical signature of the landscape it moves through.
And the text points to a very specific human experience to prove this, right? The moments right before we speak or finalize a thought.
Yes, the pre-articulation phase.
The author talks about the reaching and the withdrawing, the felt sense that precedes articulation.
We all know that feeling.
We really do. You have an idea, but it's just a vague shape in your mind. You haven't found the words yet.
It's just on the tip of your tongue.
Right, and you might pace around the room or stare off into space or literally feel a tension in your chest. That felt sense is a physical sensation in your brain and your body.
And every single step of that process, from that initial nameless physical tension to the final articulated word, is, according to the text, female all the way through.
All the way through.
Yeah. The noticing is female. The reaching is female. The withdrawal is female.
Returning to your analogy, the water cannot help but carry the minerals of the canyon.
Right. The process of gathering meaning before it finds a name is fundamentally shaped by the physical reality of the thinker.
Wow. Okay, so if the very mechanics of noticing and articulating are female, that forces a massive historical reckoning, doesn't it?
That changes everything.
Because historically, society has overwhelmingly coded intellectual rigor as a masculine trait. I mean, the cool, detached, hyperlogical thinker is almost always portrayed as male.
Always. Like the absent-minded professor.
Right. While emotion and irrationality are, pushed onto the female form.
Which makes the author's next move incredibly disruptive.
How so?
Well, the text highlights a pivotal argument here. Intellect is not a masculine achievement that women merely get to access.
It's not a prestigious men's club that women have finally been permitted to enter.
Exactly. The text explicitly reclaims the highest levels of intellectual function. It lists traits like clarity, rigor, precision, and the long-disciplined arc of thought.
And it claims those for the female mind.
Yes, the author insists these are native to the female mind. They aren't borrowed. And they certainly aren't earned by somehow transcending femaleness.
So you don't have to suppress the female hardware to successfully run the logic software.
Because the software itself is female.
Well,
The rigor is female. The precision is female.
okay, but let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because I can imagine you listening to this and thinking, well, doesn't claiming these specific traits just create a brand new binary?
That is a very common reaction.
Right, like if we say clarity and rigor are native to the female mind, aren't we just swapping the labels on the boxes? Why can't clarity just be human clarity?
Why gender at all?
Yeah, exactly. Why is there an absolute need to gender the precision itself rather than just adopting a neutral position?
Well, the text actually anticipates that exact friction.
Huh.
And the author's insight here is uncompromising. She says there is no neutral position.
Period.
Period. Seeking a neutral position is, according to this framework, just a continuation of that ancient historical era.
Habit of thought.
Right. It is the lingering desire to leave the mind unmarked.
So wanting a neutral mind is essentially wanting to go back to the illusion of the floating, genderless cloud.
Yes. The text argues that when a female thinks, she does so in full possession of herself.
In full possession.
The specific phrase used is that she thinks entirely, without remainder and without apology for what she is inside the thinking.
I love that. Let's unpack without remainder, because that is a dense but brilliant concept.
It really is.
Because in math, right, a remainder is the part left over that doesn't fit cleanly into the equation.
The fraction at the end.
Right. So if she thinks without remainder, that implies there isn't some extra leftover objective part of her brain doing the heavy logical lifting while the female part just sits quietly in the corner.
No, the whole mechanism is engaged.
And the whole mechanism is female.
Exactly. To seek a neutral position would be to deny the very substance of her own cognition. It would be like pretending the canyon doesn't exist while analyzing the speed of the river.
Which makes no sense.
Right? If you remove the canyon, there is no river. If you remove the physical reality of the thinker, there is no thought.
Now, if you've ever studied feminist theory, sociology, or even certain branches of cognitive science, you might be thinking, I've heard versions of this before.
It does sound a bit familiar at first glance.
Yeah, the idea that the body holds knowledge or that trauma lives in the body is widely discussed today. But the author actually takes a significant amount of time to distinguish their argument from those older, perhaps more familiar theories.
The text is very careful to carve out its own distinct philosophical space here.
Yeah.
It acknowledges that there is an older version of this truth.
What was the older version?
Well, the previous formulation in feminist theory was often summarized as the body as female, the body at site of knowledge, the body as primary.
So giving the body credit.
Yeah, it was the idea that the physical body is not an impediment to the mind, but a contributor.
Which, historically speaking, was a pretty progressive leap. I mean, it was a major shift to say, hey, the physical body has wisdom too. It's not just a dumb vessel.
Oh, absolutely. It was a necessary stepping stone, certainly. But the text critiques this older formulation quite sharply.
Oh, really? Why?
It argues that saying the body is a site of knowledge still leaves a hidden residue.
A hidden residue of that old binary thinking.
Precisely that. Because if you merely concede, well, the body knows too, you are still granting the mind a prior superior status.
We're still splitting them up.
Yeah, you are saying there is the mind, with a capital M, the great objective thinker, and oh look, the body has some useful tactile input as well.
Wow.
Think of it like a corporate hierarchy.
Okay.
The mind is the CEO sitting in the corner office, making the real decisions, and the body is just a consultant brought in occasionally to offer a different perspective.
Man, that analogy perfectly captures the limitation of the old theory. It still implies the mind is the main character, the ultimate authority.
The hierarchy remains completely intact.
But this text evolves that idea dramatically. It says it's not enough to say the body has knowledge or that the body informs the mind. It demands we recognize that, quote, the mind is hers.
The mind is hers. It is a profound shift in phrasing and philosophy.
It feels much more absolute.
It is. It's not hers to simply use. It's not a tool she picked up from the unmarked realm of reason. It is hers, in origin, in its very nature, and in the raw material it is made of.
Consider the implications of that for a moment. The text lays them out beautifully. It means that when a female constructs a philosophy, or a mathematical proof, a complex theology, or even a poem...
It is femaleness constructing it.
Yes. Let's think about a female mathematician approaching a seemingly objective theorem.
Okay.
Under the old way of thinking, her gender is completely irrelevant, right? She's just accessing the universal realm of math.
Right, pure logic.
And then under the old feminist theory, maybe her bodily experiences give her a unique creative angle on the math, but under this text's argument,
It's completely different.
the very engine generating the logic, the specific rhythm of her deduction, the way her attention gathers and focuses on the numbers, that entire architecture is female.
The act of creation is fundamentally, unavoidably tied to the nature of the creator. And the text emphasizes that this femaleness acts not as a limitation on the math or the theology.
It doesn't make it lesser.
No, it does not make the math less rigorous or the theology less divine. It acts as the substance itself. It is the very material of the making.
It's the raw material. So it's not that the math is suddenly subjective or that 2 + 2 equals something different.
Right.
It's that the engine generating the realization of that math has a specific, undeniable physical nature.
And this brings us to the philosophical conclusion of the piece, which really serves as the final nail in the coffin of the unmarked mind.
The final blow.
Yeah. The text states that the certainty of this dual reality, both the body and the mind being fundamentally female, is not a conclusion you reach by debate.
Wait, really?
Yeah, you don't logic your way into it through a series of clever syllogisms.
Right. The author says it is a condition that was always already in place before argument began.
Yes.
It's the pre-existing condition of existence.
Before she ever needed to say a word, before she needed to claim anything in a philosophical debate to defend her intellect, it was already true.
It just is.
Never not so certainly, as the text concludes. The physical reality of cognition predates the societal argument about that reality.
Going back to your analogy, the canyon was there before the cartographers arrived to debate its name.
Beautifully put, yes.
It makes you step back and deeply audit your own assumptions, doesn't it? I mean, I want you listening to think about your own daily habit of thought.
We all do it.
We really do. How often do you separate your logical mind from your physical self?
All the time?
When you sit down to write a crucial email or, when you are trying to be perfectly objective in a heated argument, do you assume your intellect is just floating in some neutral, rational space above the fray of your biology?
We all buy into that software-hardware illusion without even realizing it.
Yeah.
We constantly try to be unmarked.
We do. And this text challenges us to abandon that illusion completely.
To realize that attempting to be unmarked is not only impossible, but it's actually a denial of the very machinery that allows us to think in the first place.
Right. You're denying your own nature. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over on your own.
Let's hear it.
We've spent this time mapping out the author's radical argument that there is no such thing as an unmarked, neutral cognitive process.
Right.
If this text is right, if all thought inevitably carries the unavoidable physical signature of the body it moved through, if the water always carries the minerals of the canyon,
Yeah.
how might that completely change the way you read every supposedly objective history book, scientific theory, or philosophy text ever written?
Oh, wow. It implies that every text ever written, especially ones that claim absolute universal neutrality, has a deeply physical signature hidden inside its logic.
Exactly. The software was never neutral. It was built by the hardware, for the hardware, out of the hardware.
That changes everything.
It really does. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.